the video you've all been waiting for. This is part 2 of things that my narcissistic mother used to do to me, with a few guest appearances by my stepfather whilst I was growing up and into early adulthood. That at the time was weird, but looking back is even more weird. I used to work at Costa for quite a while before I got into the industry that I'm in now, and every time I worked a shift, my mother would come and visit and expect me to give her a free coffee. Every time I wasn't able to give her a free coffee, she would then berate me when I got home and got absolutely ballistic because I wasn't able to give her a free coffee because I would have got the sack. When I was 16 years old, she sat me down for a very serious conversation. These used to happen all the time. There used to be moments where I used to have to sit down and listen to them absolutely rip me a new arsehole. She sat me down when I was 16 and she told me that I needed to prepare for her to die because her MS had gotten to a point where it was too much for her, and there was a possibility that she was going to die very soon. She wouldn't see me at my wedding, she wouldn't see me have kids, she wouldn't see me grow up. Which she is right about all them things, but that's only because it was my choice and she's not flipping invited. And what, 14 years later, she's still alive. Before I cut contact with my mum, I became her power of attorney in some kind of way, so I would do phone calls for her, hospital appointments and things like that. Because she was deaf, that responsibility landed on me. And I received a phone call from the neurologist at the hospital saying that she needed to go in for an assessment for her MS, and my mum said that she had discharged herself from the specialist at the hospital because she didn't want the treatment anymore. 2 weeks before this phone call, my mum told me that she had a massive relapse and she couldn't walk, she couldn't get out of bed, and that she'd reported it to the hospital, and the hospital said that she needed to go in for an appointment. When I rang the neurologist back and I said she doesn't want the appointments anymore, she doesn't want to see the MS specialist anymore, but I am quite concerned because she has had a relapse, and they said, "I'm really sorry, Miss Manuel, but there isn't anything on our records to suggest she has had a relapse within the past 10 years. So these relapses that she used to have quite often never existed." I've mentioned this before, but every time I would go and visit her, she would always have something to say about my appearance. Whether that would be, you look too skinny, you look too fat, you look too tired, you look washed out. All of it. When I was around 7 years old, I remember walking into my mum and stepdad's bedroom and things were happening. I didn't understand what was going on, and I thought my stepdad was hurting my mum, and instead of them doing the right thing, they laughed at me and told me to get out of the room so he could carry on hurting mummy. That continued, and I went back into the bedroom, and my stepfather proceeded to drag me across the bed and smack me on the arse as punishment for disturbing their private time together. My mum used to take the piss out of me for being 19 years old and still a virgin, even though I was waiting for the right moment at the right time. She said it was highly embarrassing to her because she was, you know, going around doing whatever the hell she wanted to at that point, and I should be doing the same thing. She always asked me whether I had a boyfriend, whether I was getting a boyfriend, whether any men were interested in me, and when I would turn around and say, "Mum, I'm not interested in that," she would say, "Well, nobody would really look at you anyway, so I'm not quite surprised." Whenever it got dark, when the seasons changed, I always used to ask my mum and my stepdad to come and pick me up so I didn't have to walk home in the dark. That was always refused, and the amount of times that I walked home in the dark absolutely petrified because my mother and my stepfather weren't willing to come and pick me up because they said, "We are not a taxi service, you need to start making your own way home." This started from when I was around 13 years old. There was an incident that happened to me when I was around about 12 where one of my brother's friends tried to have sex with me in the woods. I went home and I told my parents, and my mum said, "Why would he want to do that to you?" That was also something that she said the first time that I told her that my brother had tried to kiss me, and she turned around and said, "Well, he's not going to look at you because you're not attractive enough for him." I was 9 years old at the time. When I had my first ever proper major mental breakdown in 2018, I got signed off work sick because earlier on in that day I ended up finding myself on the edge of a bridge, and my now husband, found this out, booked me an appointment in with the doctors, got into the doctors, got signed off sick, got referred to the crisis team. I had meetings, they would come out once a day for about 3 weeks. My mum turned around to me and said, "But what have you got to be sad about?" And then a little while later after that, she then said to me, "Well, now you know how it feels." And that is something that she always used to say. Whenever I would try and go to her and talk to her about my feelings, she would always turn around and say, "Well, that's how I feel, so now you know how it feels." I continued to get phone calls after I'd cut ties with my mum, and I said that I'm no longer responsible. They then told me, "Oh, are you not so-and-so?" And I was like, "No, that's not me, that's my brother's girlfriend." and they were like, oh, well, your mother's put her down as her daughter. And I was like, of course she has, of course she has. Mum once received a £15,000 loan from my dad. My dad was not in contact with us. He took this loan out at the bank and gave it to my mum because my mum said that she needed it to take us all on holiday and really give us something that we deserved. We never went on holiday as children, and with that £15,000 she decided to get herself a new kitchen. I'm sure you can appreciate this in some way. I was 18 years old, I was in my bedroom privately enjoying myself in my own private space, and because my stepfather never knew anything about privacy, he walked in and it made me feel very, very uncomfortable. I then went downstairs and I told my mum, and I said, can you please make sure that he knocks before he enters, because I never want anything like that to happen again. And she turned around to me and said, well, you shouldn't be doing things like that when we're in the house. So made it seem like it was my fault, even though my brother used to leave material lying about everywhere. When I was living at uni, I came home to find out that my bedroom had been completely emptied, and the first thing that my stepfather said to me was, the toys that were in your bedside table, I've just put them in a box. So there was a complete invasion of privacy on that side. I found it very embarrassing. My mum thought it was hilarious. When I was younger, I had this uncontrollable need to make sure that my mother understood that I never did anything intentionally to hurt her, so I spent a lot of time apologising to her. Never once did my mum say sorry to me for anything, and I would spend a lot of time writing letters to her, really pouring my heart out. Every time I would give her these letters, she would rip them up. Every time I would try and verbally apologise to her, she would turn her hearing aids off, so I wasn't actually able to communicate it with her. There were multiple occasions where I left the house and went to go stay with friends, or I would leave the house for hours on end, quite late at night. Never once did she check in to see where I was. And to be honest, there were things that I used to do that could have warranted me being reported to the police as a missing child. She just didn't care enough. So one of the worst things that she used to do when my mental health started to take a real nosedive and I started to go to therapy, she would message me after every therapy session and say, you didn't talk about me, did you? I've been the best mum in the entire world to you. Little did she know that she was all I would ever talk about in these sessions, but then I felt incredibly guilty for doing so because she would give me this constant reminder every single week. That's all for now. Let me know if you want a part 3.